Alright, welcome everybody to day 17, final day for the pilot season. Um, so I am leaving for Seagraph in 6 days. Gonna have a few chats over there, figure out what to do with season 1, but I think I reckon it's gonna happen. Uh, there's a few things I would like to change. I'm super glad that I actually did the whole pilot season thing. I've learned a ton about how this thing works, what I can and cannot do. Uh, Not like wildly different from what I would have expected it to be, but still not exactly. I'm just glad I didn't do season 1 right away. I think it would have been uh, convoluted and would not have come out the way I wanted it. So season 1 is probably to some extent going to be a reboot. Um, as in, we're going to go over some of the notions again, better context, maybe less rambling, more compact format. But let us move on with the final episode. So there's no real grand finale. Hopefully that's not a disappointment. But the internet has voted. I put up a poll on. Sorry, I got really itchy mustache. Put up a poll on Twitter, and again, I was surprised by the results for it. Um, so, almost half the votes are for assetizing the rig. Practically nobody wants to see random scripting stuff, and only a few people wanted to see an AMA. So what we are going to do is actually assetize the rig, give people what they want, um, and as long as we're not in this, we don't have confidence in getting a season renewed. All right, so let's assetize the rig. Let's talk a little bit about that, and then see how much time is left, and maybe we can talk a little bit about what we can start the next season with, what I think are the priorities. So, assetizing the rig. Now, the last episode, previously on Cult of Rig, we sorted out the loading, installing the callback on load. So, long story short, if you load the scene from scratch, and I'm going to put them up on the website, if you load the scene from nothing, this is moving the IK. Now this should actually bump the probably invisible after the resampling FK handle, to the IK spot, and then the FK has taken over. So that's good. That has basically made the scene self-contained. Now the next part, and this is something that I don't advise in all versions of Maya, but I am gonna stay on the bleeding edge of the software. So when 2018 will come out, we'll be brave and probably use that. And I'd be surprised if they didn't announce it at SIGGRAPH, so I expect it to be, soon enough. Is my assets, which were actually called containers. So let me pick up the API and there's one thing worth knowing, which is, and that's why I'm saying they were called containers, because a lot of stuff in the API is still calling them containers. So if you look for their functor, it's actually MFN container node, I believe. So yeah, they're called assets, probably in competition with Udini assets, or maybe they just made more sense to people, but they're actually called containers internally. And if you were to look for their type, the constant describing the type is K container. Now, a few things I like about that, so let's go for DAG only. Now, one of the classic problems of giving an interface to users is basically that, especially if you have buffers and stuff like that, what the actual user sees is not the user interface. What they see is the entire guts, as well as the private interface, as well as everything else in the rig. Do not like that. It gives people access to things that they shouldn't be even caring about, let alone touch and modify. So a classic workaround for that is people will often take a bunch of nodes, and I think the command is lock node upper camel case, and you can basically lock node and go true or false, and that will basically prevent the node from being modified. It has its, it has its time and place. It's a good thing to lock nodes, but it makes for a convoluted publishing setup. As in, you have to carefully track what you want to lock and what you don't want to lock. And also, it means that you have a difference between the rig that gets published and the rig that you're actually offering that is more than I would want to. It means that if you need to troubleshoot a rig in scene, you have to unlock a bunch of nodes. It's painful. On top of that, it just generates confusion because now they still see all the guts of the rig, but they now basically can manipulate some of them. So there is sort of a solution to something like that, and the asset editor is in here. Not a huge fan of the asset editor window. It's one of the first things you want to grab. The API came a long way between 2016 and 2017. Well, or at least it came some way. Some stuff you still have to do with commands, especially labels, but it's usable. So let us move on with that. So if you're not familiar with containers, and you might hear noises because, as I said, it's slightly off schedule for us as a family, like our daughter and all of that. Yeah, just ignore the noises. It's the nature of our stream. Hi. My wife woke up. Okay, so you can get a container node like this. It's how I pretty much operate everything. And what you get out of it, if you show all attributes, is a fair chunk of stuff, but it's not as busy as a transfer node. And the most important thing, or rather the most interesting thing, is black boxing. Well, arguably two things. The interface part of it, not so much the templates, but with the published nodes and the published attributes, as well as being able to actually give them icons. That's just sugar, and having the black box parameters. So here's how this works. Let's say that we're gonna start. We haven't rigged the frag. Let's start with something simple like the will, and we use the component extension. Normally for the DAG stuff I would not use an extension, but in this case we have burned that token, so we're gonna do DG component, and this basically describes the duality. So you have an entry point in the DAG for some component, and you're also gonna have a DG equivalent. Now, dealing with those is actually pretty trivial if you want to populate it. The window here, and you have things that are interesting, like having an active container that can also be dangerous, but these are basically, well, they're containers, so these are basically gonna allow you to label and contain things, and they do have some properties I like. There's something that you have to be careful with, which is advanced assets. You have all the create stuff, but you also have, and this might be super tiny, so just make sure you follow at home, you can also set current asset. Now, setting the current asset as you work in something is, if you know that you're working in a component, you can set the current asset to the component container that you're working on, and everything that's created is automatically included in that component. That also potentially makes for a mess if you are working with multiple components at once, you forget to switch, and things end up all over the place. So we're going to include middle click drag and drop works, which I like, and you might have seen that it takes it away from the outliner. Again, this part with downsampling, with downscaling and resampling and all might be tough to read. Play at home. Now you can basically go in the outliner and go, how do you want to actually see the asset contents, under the asset or under the parent or both? As you're offering and as you're actually offering container population, I will recommend you do both so that you can keep an eye on what is where. So we've included the whole DAG population. Now, this is where normally you will really want to script, but don't have time to write a graph iterator and all that stuff. You will also see the icon change. That depends on the version of, like the version of Maya I use in 2017. It all got polished and prettified a little bit, but it's usually pretty obvious. And that will change color when you black box. So, next part that we are interested in, do we have DG nodes that are actually related to the wheel? I don't believe we do, so let's also get ourselves another, let's do the God node. So create another container. You can use this window if you want. As I said, find it a little bit dodgy at times. We're capitalizing, yeah. God.name DG component. So again, from this window, you actually do have quite a few things. So you have add to asset and so on. I said I don't like it. I don't like the layout and stuff like that. But as far as working with it goes, it's mostly reliable. So you can pin an asset and make it unique, and that gives you access to. And this is the part that I was saying. I don't really love it because it's a little bit confusing how it manages all this publishing interface stuff. But yeah, it's perfectly workable for the simple stuff. So we do have a bunch of stuff that we know is God node only. Normally what I will be doing, this part I will be doing scripted, as in I would have some sort of like, even just a haphazard one, some sort of API to deal with these things. We don't right now, so we'll have to do it by hand. But normally what I will be doing, if you've been true to respecting interface contracts and so on, you could very easily walk from output to input, or if it's a master like up, no input whatsoever, it's not driven by anything like the God node, only from output and backwards. I will walk the graph and fetch everything that I care about and add that to the component. Now, all of these should be safe to put in the component. Now, if you don't show DG nodes, despite these being DG nodes, they still get shown, which personally I think is a good feature. So we're going to include all of these in the God node component. That is the entirety of our DAG presence. And because we've decided to do all of our interface, so output, input control, and so on, as DAG elements, it also means that this is now interface complete. It has all the elements that we care about as far as the interface goes. What we'll be missing, obviously, is the DG part of it. Exclude this one. So as usual, chat, ask questions if you have any questions to ask. Now I think we've been pretty good at actually naming things. So very often you can just look at the at the prefix of names and go like, well, I could actually select everything that is called God node n, and maybe populate things like that. You are trusting your consistency in naming when you do that. Up to you. You can work many ways for this problem. So what we do have here, and we've actually not been that good, I believe. So these are tag items. No, we've actually been pretty good. So we are also going to include these inside the God node component. Now, as you can see, obviously enough, the container itself is getting busier and busier, and then if you show both container and the actual tag hierarchy, that's going to get pretty busy pretty soon. So let's get to the part that I like about this. In terms of presenting the public interface to the animators, the moment you use black box, basically, and this reflects in the outliner, which is the part I like the most, everything, and this is pretty pervasive, so there's no easy to work around it in the UI itself. It's not like people can toggle an option and forget about it, and then they will not see this culling. The moment you black box a container, only its public items will actually be displayed, and that is true for both the DAG items and the DG items. It's true for all of the outliner population. It has an effect that I don't love on the node editor, but I can't say that it's a bad thing that it does it. So if I select something that I know to be in that container and I graph it, all I get is this container node. And the way to change that is use assets and published attributes. This is true. So if you turn it to false and then you actually graph what you had in the God node, you will get what is actually going on. So that's a feature. It's not a bug. You might like it. You might not like it. It's not all that bad. I mean, if you... So here's the thing. Like these, I think originally were mostly meant to... They're very... You can tell that they really wanted to be something like Houdini assets, where you go, okay, they're halfway between compounds, as in they just do encapsulation catalog, and partially also something where you go, okay, we're going to allow this encapsulation and we're going to allow for an interface, and people are going to bring them in. They have templates, which I don't use a lot, but they're pretty useful if you're doing shaders, shader trees at least. And we're going to allow people to bring in and mix and match these things, and they're going to have, you know, this interface, and you can connect across multiple containers. So they're kind of like a poor man's compound. They support hierarchies, they support containers in containers, and so on. I have always used a subset of functionalities of them, and they work pretty well for rigs. So with that out of the way, don't care for templates. Asset attributes, I mean, once you have chosen black box or not, that's pretty much all we care about. So how do we get the part about the public interface working? Now, parent anchors and child anchors, that's when you want to nest components or parent components. It will basically do, and it's not quite 100%, it's very neat, it's not 100% accurate to the structure of the graph, so be careful with it, use it sparingly. But what it does is it basically, let me copy this tab. It will basically allow you, pen is useless. It will basically allow you to establish different hierarchies in terms of how the component works versus what the actual graph is like. So let us turn off black boxing for a moment. And let's say that when and if we hierarchize something, have we included, no, we haven't included the God node component itself. So we want the hierarchy item as well to be in there. If you were to parent things, the child and parent anchors will basically say, okay, if I'm making this component the child of another component, use the child anchor. And if I'm making it the parent of another component, use the parent anchor. So at least I think it's like that. It might be the other way around. Just play with it. I use the same item for both, but if you had long hierarchy or something, you could choose to have different objects so that when things are parented, when you parent across components and stuff like that, or if you were to parent something like drag and drop for parenting under the, well, the DigiNode it wouldn't work, but under an actual flagged object, you will get those entry points used for you. So I don't think this supports drag and drop. That will be too useful, yeah. But you can do enter parent anchor name. I only use one, so it will use your selection, so be careful. Like a lot of stuff here and here uses your selection, and then it can be tough to get rid of. At the same time, I also want to add the same child anchor, just call it that. You don't really care for these a lot, other than that you can then see them as part of the black boxing without issues. If they were not, they will disappear with the black boxing. Now, pardon me. Moving on, the next part that is of interest is the published nodes. And this is where it gets, at least for me, really interesting. Because if this is not black boxed, and God node, so I just black box it. Oh no, we do have it, silly. So these, if the animators were to see these, it will be fairly confusing at best. So be careful with the labels. Personally, I like the labels to be the same of the object because, so bear in mind, okay, because this is supposed to be used directly, like the way they originally proposed it as asset containers, there are a lot of options that make sense if you were to, and surfacing people or lighting people might do it, or effects people might do it. If you were to use the attribute editor for these, I'm not proposing we use these in such a way that the animator would have to open it and use it. at all. I wouldn't want the animator to actually open the attribute editor for the component, beside the fact that most animators I work with don't ever open the attribute editor. I just want to exploit the properties that this has and how it interacts with the UI. So adding publish nodes, actually let's cancel that. Does it do multiple selections? That I don't know, because this stuff I normally have always scripted. Not probably not. So let's add that one. That rant was because it will make sense to have shorter names. So instead of God node and master control, you would have just master. If you were to actually show this attribute editor to people, if you are going to be using it programmatically, like you write an API around it, then I suggest that you go for full names for now, because we're mostly showing a feature in Maya and suggesting how to use it, or at least one way to use it. I'm going to go for the short names for neatness, I guess. Then we are going to go for master offset. Are we using? Yeah, we're using camel case there. Then we are going to go with this com. So this is a lot of clicking. This is the kind of stuff you can automate pretty easily. So com offset. These are slightly different names that I normally use, so I have to read the lot. And offset. So I'm curious, actually let me see how many people are currently in chat. So does anybody in chat actually use components, containers, sorry, or assets, or whatever you want to call them? Now, we have done all of these, and because we had stuff selected, they've been linked. The documentation is a little bit confusing if you're coming at it from scratch, but if you have a use case and you just click around a couple of things, try and use them and so on, it'll be pretty easy. So these literally publish as node. Then you have unbind from node, which would literally just leave you the label, which is then pretty tricky to get rid of. You need the asset editor window. Message passing. But yeah, so be careful with that. You might have to script your way around some of the issue. And does undo work? Yeah, no, I think it's one of those things where you go like, it's not gonna do very well for you. So buyers beware. Yeah, and it's telling you, oh, master is already in use. So you go, okay, how do I do it from here? And that is where normally I would actually have scripts for this stuff. But I suspect that now we'll have to deal with it. So publish nodes, master. So it's telling me that it's populated here. So this might just be, you can't trust, that's the other thing. That's the other thing that is sometimes I-rating. Yeah, there you go. It actually did work with undo, and I undid the. If you copy tab, it's tricky. The UI loop for some of the attribute editor stuff and things that have complex attribute editor templates, like some things, like some nodes, like this one does. At least I believe some of it is implemented in a template. They can get quirky, so be mindful of that. Baby steps. It's not something that you should be doing like for hours at an end all the time, so consider it a zen moment, I guess, and do things slowly and quietly. Don't swear at the monitor like I was just about to do. So see, this is one of those things. So you go, okay, have you actually done anything good with these? So yeah, you can't trust the refresh of a tab that's been copied away. It will sometimes mess with the actual logic part of the template for it. Anyway, so now this is the part I like the most, or rather this is the entire reason why I use them, because they do have, black boxing has a very, very real effect on what people actually see. And it has a good separation through these between how you as a TD will work in a way where you go, okay, my component should be, in many ways, should be flat, and the interface establishes how these connect in sort of flat, sparse, shallow hierarchy, whatever you want to call it, population, and things connect across. Whereas the artist view, something like that, will be under parent only. You don't show diginodes, and if you have under parent only and not show diginodes, the diginodes for the containers will actually not be shown. Again, that is a feature, and I think that is appropriate. All right, there's funny comments going on in chat. So that's pretty much it in terms of the public interface of it, I guess. This is the part I like the most. This is the part, this is the reason why I use them. Basically, you have just, and this works with peak walking as well. Now, I know that 2017 added the controls, which have other benefits to them. So, and controls allow you for custom peak walking, which is good, especially if you want to go sideways, but I don't want to manually set every possible controls peak walking options through the Maya controls, which, by the way, 2017 only, I believe, but you have them here, I believe. Possibly, I don't know. It's another thing that I've, player and controller, tag as controller. So you can select things and tag them as control. Not gonna go over that. We will when we will do power level, because they have a serious effect in that. Anyway, so that's it. Now you have basically claimed the outliner again for the animators, because they can actually go into the rig, and instead of seeing all this crap, what they see is only stuff that they're interested in. There is less chances that they will see things that they're not supposed to meddle with. If by mistake they actually show diginodes, we haven't done all the components, but once we will have done those, they just do not get vision over things that they're not supposed to be dealing with. That they, honestly, most of the time they don't even want to deal with, unless they're very, very dangerous animators. So, will component we've done, it doesn't really have a public interface. All we care for was to make it disappear, I guess. Now, and that's the other thing, if something like the will component is an IO component only, you could choose not to publish child and parent, and that's why I'm saying I don't normally use the hierarchical portion of it. I only set child and parent to display things in the outliner, but let's do it instead of talk about it. So tag objects only, I can do it. Advanced asset contents, under asset. So at this point, okay, so we had already included the whole wheel. That's good. Yeah, including the component heading. Now, if I black box this one, it's actually going to disappear entirely from the hierarchy. It should. So if we go both, just to clarify things. So there you go. The wheel, which we have implemented as purely I/O only, other than the geometry connections, which we don't care about. Those are the pedals. Anyway, the wheel has now completely disappeared. So if people have no control over it and shouldn't care about it, then it's just gonna go away. So if you want to call items that are guts, technical items only, you can also use it that way. I do believe we did have a control in the wheel. I thought we did. So yes, we do. We do have the main control. So that's another one that in many ways we want to conform. Now with component, let's go. So you can actually select something, and normally the attribute editor or the channel box and stuff like that will show you as one of the node options. Will show you the container they're in. So it's doable to work with it without copy tabs, without going insane. So we're gonna go add parent, leave the name untouched, add child, leave the name untouched. And yes, you can add multiples so that you can drag and drop under those multiples. So you can have multiple parent points, multiple child points, anchors. So yeah, they're called anchors here. So lastly, we just what we call the main, which is a horrifying name, but so be it. And sure, let's go by the same naming conventions we had before. So black box that, and same as before. Now you only see the parts that you're interested in. What are you doing? We're going over assetizing the rig and showing how to use the interface part of Maya containers or assets or whatever you want to call them to basically show reduced public interfaces. So, do we want to do the lot? Might as well, right? So we haven't rigged the frake at all. But because we created a new word for it, I'm not going to delete it. I will feel guilty about it. Now, these we don't care to assetize. And I will explain why. We were saying, so I think also if you create a new component with stuff selected, it will actually, oops, it will actually contain everything that you have selected. Don't quote me on it, but we'll try it. So that object's only off. Type. Oh, come on. How hard can it be? So pedals and pedals M has a we have this HRC thing, which is for the geometry. So there you go. That was fortuitous, I guess. These should be everything that we care about for the pedals. We've been good with the naming. Well, I assume and I hope we were. Yeah, looks like it. So if this time I actually use the asset editor instead of creating and populating things manually, I suspect that you can do new with selection. So where is it? Assets. There should be a new in here. Create asset with transform. I forget. Operation, preview contents, history channels. So it will actually walk the graph as well for you. I normally don't like this kind of stuff because it will bring things in. I want to control everything that I do. So I don't remember we transform or not. We transform what the difference is because I normally don't do these things for the UI. Create asset with transform. So no, it's not contained anything. Doesn't seem like it did. Nope. Oh, this is preview content, so create asset. Yeah. Yes, it has contained it. So I stand corrected. It works the way we want this. So if you create the asset with transfer, again, don't quote me on it. I normally don't use it this way. You will actually, and it will do a bunch of things with you, tell you what the owner is, the creation is, creation date, and so on. It will actually also parent it the way it was parented originally, and this is kind of a fake node in a way, and I don't like that. Nobody's been reminding me, but I reckon we should save at this point. Yeah, see, it does all of this work that I don't want it to do. Now, the other funny thing is that before you delete one of these, if you delete it, it will blast away the contents of it. So, the way you want to deal with this, I guess, we're kind of showing a Maya feature in a way here. We go remove from asset, so this is empty, and we should be able to delete it. So, there you go. So we have pedals M component. We want all of this stuff. We're gonna do container. We're gonna do it my way. And what did we say we were calling them? DG component? Something like that. Now the other thing I don't know, but I'm willing to check it. I'm willing to take this risk. No. Nope, Maya says no. It also says whatever. I was hoping to middle click my way into here. It actually is not. Alright, sure. Whatever. So the part that surprises me is that now, I think you can middle click to here. I would have expected this to show up dynamically, but making the same typo. So, okay, word to the wise, if you add something that corresponds to the outliner filter, it will not care, it will not update your outliner. Sort of makes sense, maybe an event on hover would be nice. So we drag in container all of this stuff. Then we go under asset and we should see things as we expect them to be. So okay, I'm gonna, sorry for the silence, I was actually catching up with chat that got busy. I like chat being busy. But we also gotta move on with these. So we do have the component, usual dance, find your DAG entry point, and go in, get your attribute editor for that part, add a parent anchor, add a child anchor, and then you can do the whole dance with the published attributes. At this point, I reckon we might as well finish this rig. So extra attributes, don't care for that. We actually want this part. I wish there is there a way, like, is there a way to pin this? Because I hate that I cannot copy tab reliably. Let's see if we have better luck. Maybe for just the buttons, it will be fine. So we do have pedal sem settings. So let's say that we call it just settings, and the staff. Then the pedal IK, and we're gonna be there in here and just call it IK. We're assuming we're never gonna add other IK controls. Terrible idea. So I'm almost being messy on purpose here. Almost. What would we say? Pedal left for this, wouldn't it? And then, do we have anything else that is controls? No, it doesn't seem like it. So, if we go back to our animation friendly view, and it's just parents only, clear off these, take off the diginodes. Now this is the pedals component, which I think I've just unparented? Really? Whatever. Oh yes, because I created one with transfer and did the whole dance. Yeah, sure. Now if I black box it, there you go. And it also makes it clear what the hierarchies are. Now, clearly we forgot about adding the output. And that's the other part I like. It makes it pretty easy to debug certain things. So we move these to the pedals component, and that is it. So let's turn these off. Now your rig interface has just gone from whatever we had before, which is not a ton of nodes to be honest, to actually have just the stuff that people can animate. Now if you want, because you don't want these components to be transformed, this is the stuff that I would actually lock. And if you have a solid enough naming convention, let's see, I think it's just lock node, and they will be locked. So let us save again. And now people can't really mess with this stuff. You can't delete it. It might be super tiny because of the usual downscaling, upsampling, but it's saying, oh, error. So now we'll consider these basically assettising rig in most regards. This is basically made public interface part of it obvious. I wouldn't lock these because there's a bunch of side effects to locking a node. You just, if you use references, you'll be fine. Well, for the most part, but you shouldn't be able to delete one of these. And if an animator deletes an actual control, I mean, they deserve everything that comes to them after that, right? So, these out of the way, what was the other part? Okay, assettising things. Now, this is tricky. There's a million and one ways to do it in Maya, and none of them is quite right. Hopefully help is coming soon, so I have to say I could not, and this is where you go, okay, I've talked to people, I might or might not have knowledge of things that are public, and you go like, well, how much can I discuss? Well, something is in the API about this, which I like a lot, but I could not find anything to, what do they call them? I think they call them proxy. Oh, okay. So MFN attribute. So there is something here, and I can't find it in the UI. Maybe somebody in chat has, and they can help me with it. But it has started making an appearance here. You can look at the API doco, you can look at attributes, and you can find that you can ask for an attribute, like you can ask an attribute whether it's a proxy attribute or not. Let us go over that very, very quickly. So, and this comes from the exercise days. Now, normally in Maya, you have some object, you know, in the scene. Well, it doesn't necessarily need to be, and that is your, you know, it's a DAG item, and I'm using square brackets to indicate some sort of type or class or things, and that's your settings or your control panel or whatever you want to call it. And that has a bunch of attributes. This is where we have the FKIK switch. This is where we have the parent space switch. This is where we have the pedal alignment and whatever else, right? So when you look at something like that, the desire, well, it depends on your animators, obviously. Some people like things highly localized. Some people don't. So there's two ways you might want to provide an interface. The tablet being useless now, even it has the Wacom drivers running and all. I get all the super duper buttons, but it's still crap. I hate Wacom. They are a crappy company. So anyway, they make some good products, but they're a terrible company. So sometimes the desire is to have things localized. Like in example, if we have something like we have here for the, well, I should probably hide the dirty tracker actually. Wacom makes the absolute worst drivers. I think it's a toss-up, but I'm not going to name the other company because I have good friends working in that company. So I really shouldn't crap on them, but there's another company that's worse than Wacom, I reckon. Or at the very least as bad. Anyway, let's not rant too much. Let's be positive here. Lock and hide. I don't want... probably shouldn't lock it, but anyway, anyway, doesn't matter. So pedals gravity align, in example. Let's say that people are never supposed to touch the second pedal. Maybe, just maybe, that pedal's gravity align should only be available because it makes sense. Principle of locality and least surprise. It makes sense to have it on the pedal. Let people go, I want to change the behavior of this object. It means that I actually want to see that thing only on this object. I don't want side effects. I don't want to see that thing somewhere else, such as, if not in here, because this is a central panel, I don't want to see it when I open the IK control. If something affects only the IK, maybe I want to see it only on the IK control. If something affects only the FK, and so on and on. Some attributes, however, have clearly the need for shared visibility. So you have an FK-IK switch that belongs to both the IK and the FK. If you have something that belongs nowhere because it's a general setting, like say root to end switch, that does the whole component, and it references another component that's too far out of scope. We want locality of some, we want some degree of locality, and we don't want exteriority, or whatever they're calling in topology, to cross the boundaries and go into another component. I would say that, provided the animators agree when you talk to them, that this one should probably be on every control, so wherever you are, you can switch the space. And that's where things get a little bit tricky. Now, your central control panel is pretty neat for the graphing side of things. Ah, that driver. Come on. But it's not without issues. So it has positive and negatives to it. Okay, let's select it, rewind. Okay, it has positives and negatives about it. Now, when we'll do graphs, it might sometimes, I mean, like this approach might bottleneck your graph at times. Rarely things are well designed, but if you have a million attributes that's, you know, spread out across the whole component, you might have a marshalling cost in getting all those attributes and getting sorted enough that it might slow down very, very marginally your component. Not going to be a problem, bridge to cross when we get there. It's an edge case anyway. But now this stuff is upstream of all of these objects. which makes it kind of tricky to show these on these objects because they're being affected by it. So there's a couple tricks to that, and some people will know about it. In Maya, you can create a shape and add attributes to that shape, and I guess we can actually do it. So just to show how it works, this is one solution. Oh man, I love that. It's one solution. It's one that I've used in the past. It's not one that I love. It's a bit hacky, but you know, we do what we have to do. So that's a transparent, that's a shape. That should persist. Now you can even make it an empty shape if you need. Now if render curve, so that's the other thing. We don't want to see any of these. If we add an attribute to this, so what am I doing? If we add an attribute to this, whatever you want to call it, my magic control, sure, let's make it a float, let's give it a UI, let's add it. Now, where did I add it? I added it to the nerve suit. I'm an idiot. So I want to add it to the shape. Make sure that you're on the shape. Let's redo that. I can't believe I'm actually calling something like this. I feel like I'm a bad programming book right now. But whatever. So extra attributes. Now, this, I think that's Arnold. That's a set name. Don't care for that. We don't care for the line width. Those shouldn't appear anyway, whereas these should. Now, if I take that shape, and I mean just the shape, not the transform. Shame. And I parent that under a bunch of controls. Let's say that we want that magic attribute, whatever it is, to actually appear under all of these. I think I do need to do them one by one. And you use -n minus s if you want the command. Then that instances the shape. And you can do that however many times you actually want. Now, once you've done that, this could go somewhere central in that component, but it's also gonna end up in an odd place, and this is something you can play with, or you gotta be careful about it if this is not what you intend. If it's not included in the container, it will actually elegantly disappear. Now, what's just happened though is that because that shape exists under all of those, they will all show you an instance of that control. So anything I select that I've parented it to now, so if I select my master control, I now have an instance of that attribute. Now these are all under the hood accessing the actual attribute that is in here. So on the actual shape. And shapes are the only thing you can instance. So instancing, if you don't know, is like one object, one item can have many, many parents. In a hierarchy. Now, that is a way to do it. If you then don't containerize these, maybe you put it on the side, you decide that you have a third element to each component. Let's say that this is the hidden proxy, so whatever you want to call it. Now you can have multiples of these. You can then make them 0 points so that they don't get shown as actual things that you can select, and so on and on, because they will be added to the actual shape for that thing. Or maybe you can even put them as a small circle somewhere or something like that, so that controls also get an explicit option, whatever, it doesn't matter. Now you basically have those proxies. You have the same attribute that can be displayed wherever you actually want it. You can even do some things with callbacks where you will create a hidden proxies objects. You have your control panel, settings panel, whatever you want to call it, like this, and you synchronize it with your hidden proxies by those callbacks, and you can get pretty crazy. It is actually pretty reliable. So if you are looking to experiment with ways to exploit Maya loopholes, to basically, all you're doing is basically beating the channel box into submission to show things that it normally wouldn't quite show you. Then they're all valid. So that's one option. Blast it away, and I believe, the shape itself will remain under those options, under those other items. What I don't remember is how you delete the source of the instance like right away, but not a big deal. So no, actually, sorry, I lied. It will, because it's a shape, it will, if the parents are containered, it will actually show you, even if it's black box, it will actually show you those shapes if you show shapes. So, doesn't matter, we get rid of it, we don't like it. Now, again, chat, let me know if this makes sense or not. Hopefully it does up to this point. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to containers, and this has its glitches. So stray node, don't want stray nodes. This has its this has its glitches. I would not recommend you use it before 2016.5, possibly even 2017. A lot of them got fixed over the last couple of years. I've reported a crap ton of them. Autodesk has actually been pretty good at fixing them, but let's go, and I haven't forgotten about proxy attributes, don't worry, we're going to go back to that. Also because hopefully means more people will put pressure on Autodesk to make them show through properly. Now, we do have a component here, so we're working on the pedals, and there is one property, which again, you can clearly tell that somebody was thinking more of surfacing than anything else. Sometimes, especially with surfacing, you have a lot of parameters and you have very few scene controls. Light rigs, maybe you go like 80% attributes and 20% controls, or at best 50-50. Rigs, it's kind of the opposite. Normally you have many controls and only a few selected attributes you want to use. Anyway, so what you have in here is published attributes, and this is the part where it can get dodgy but also very powerful. If you don't write yourself scripts, which are pretty easy to write, you will want the asset editor for this. And again, don't blindly take my word for all of these. Play with them. They're not for everybody. I've used them successfully a lot at home, found a lot of dark corners, and then brought them into work. So in here, you can, so if you pin, so here's another thing. If you make an asset, it's like this UI is super sparse, right? There's nothing in it, not sparse over, it's super empty. If you make an active asset, or if you pin that asset, that's how you obtain editing privileges on it. I don't know exactly why this is. It could be better, honestly. This window has been long neglected and it needs some love. But I do like what you can actually do with assets. So this is the part where I don't remember what all the things are. So these are nodes, I believe. Oh no, sorry, these are the attributes and these are the nodes. Name without binding to an attribute. So these allow you to publish things. So you have publishing, which means, okay, get me a name. I'm just gonna name this field and that's it. And then you have binding, which means, okay, bind this object, put it in that field. So you now have kind of dictionary style, you have a label to data correspondence. Now you also have published selected attributes. Now, for that to work, you actually need to, and this is confusing at times, you actually need the attributes in here. You can do it, like you can sort of like sometimes get something from other selections, maybe the outliner with attributes on works. Had not great luck with it, don't love it. Now, with all of that out of the way, what we do care about, so that's pins, so it also means that you can start using the rest of the interface for useful things. We want FKIK switch. The search, I think, used to work pretty well, but it doesn't seem to work for attributes. I might have lied, it might be case sensitive. And that's another thing that drives me insane sometimes. You have to often reset this thing, because this outliner is pretty dodgy. Anyway, let's stop complaining about stuff and let's start doing stuff. What did we call the FKIK switch? It's bound to be in, there you go, FKIK switch. So you can go publish and bind basically in one go. And it will just take the name of the attribute, I believe. You can affect it, you can change, you have label and object for the API, you can change all of that. Now back to it, we do care, and you can see it twice now, and I'll explain why in a second. Pedals gravity align and root to end switch, we care about both of those. I love the absolutely random order of this stuff, it's so helpful. So it's not alphabetical, it's not custom versus factory, it's whatever came to mind, the order it looks like. Pedals gravity align, we only need a couple, we're not gonna go OCD, do we need to do them all? Dirty tracker, we don't want to publish, so let's at least hide it. Yeah, let's go a little bit OCD, root to end switch, I mean we might as well, it's just one more. So now we have 3 attributes published with that. And what happens when you publish an attribute, and people might love or might hate these, okay, there's the pen, is that now you will see those published attributes on every item in the asset that is a published node. Love it or hate it, it's actually pretty useful. So this is in many ways a proxy attribute. Again, there's many dark corners to this, so I don't recommend you use it too early. Like, I think they were introduced in 2013, tempted to say, bit of a train wreck in 2013. They got not loved for a year or so, then they started cleaning them off. In 2016, they started being usable as far as I'm concerned. 2017 is where I would say you can use them in production. So there you go. Now everything you select, and when you select this control panel, which normally I will hide unless people want some special something for the advanced options, you will see them twice because it will show you itself, you know, the node itself, and then it will also show you this overlay on top, whatever you want to call it, first class citizen, container, published attributes for it. And then you will see the same thing on the IK, you will see the same thing on the pedals and so on. So this is another way to basically take attributes that exist somewhere in a central location, in multiple central locations, whatever, and you can even mix and match components if you're adventurous. So you feel free to, you know, start playing with it, because you can mix and match these things and combine it into having multiple headers. So you can use dummy components just to create a heading for these, and have a play. There's many ways to use it. Some of them will explode in your face, for the record. Now, the last option, which is something that XSI had, that is personally my favorite, that we don't have apparently in Maya yet, but this gives me hope, is that so in Maya you can already alias an attribute. So if you have something like this, and this is a DAG object, and these are your M objects for the attributes, you can actually duplicate these and alias it to something else. So you can say that, you know, oh, I want to, and can't say I love it. I don't remember if you can do addition or replacement. You can get to the same attribute for multiple paths. And you could alias this, you know, to FK to IK. You could be, if you're completely stupid, you could alias it. Oh, this is just a switch. Despite the fact that we have 3 or 4, this is the switch. And all of that does is it basically gives you 2 names for the API and for bits and bobs here and there to actually fetch these. So this is a fetch kind of thing, and that's it. Now, if you have another object somewhere, and maybe somebody can correct me about it, maybe somebody will tell me, oh, there's always been a way to do proper proxy attributes in Maya, and it's so and so. I don't know of it. I've never heard anybody who said the new one. Let's say that we want to have our FK control have an attribute. Right now, by silly Wacom drivers again, I was about to flip my pen, but I can't do it. So what we have done to enable us is basically go, okay, this is, I am having a really hard time with my Wacom drivers. It's driving me insane. So we've enclosed all of these into a big container, and we're saying, okay, I have a bunch of nodes, you know, my FK, my IK, and so on, and they're part of the nodes interface. And I have a bunch of attributes, and they're also part of the interface. So as the channel box will query this object or anything that is in there, it will basically be the channel box that goes, okay, so you have this object here, show me all of these attributes, and by the way, because this object is contained in this container, please also show me these. So you haven't really proxied anything, you're just instructing the channel box, possibly graph editor or something else, to change how they pull the data, for better or for worse. Now proxy attributes, however, work slightly differently, and I will probably still use containers if proxy attributes in my existed. In fact, I think I would just for claiming back the outliner, but I would definitely not use published attributes, not the way I use them at least. I might decide to make them something else, use them for something else, you know. Maya is like pork, you don't throw away anything if you can avoid it. But anyway, proxy attributes are different. So what they work like is you have your controls and you have another DAG object of sorts that owns attributes. A proxy literally works by saying, okay, the level of indirection is not aggregation like it works here. It's actually instantiation. Where you go, okay, I want on the IK I want to see this one, on the FK I want to see this one. Oh, by the way, on the IK I want to see this one as well. And this is literally, if proxy attributes are done properly, this is literally going to reference those. So it's multiple points of access to shared items that can be anywhere. Instructing the channel box, instructing the graph editor, but they will be one tier down in terms of indirection, I will hope. So this is something that you could do in XSI, you can do it in Houdini. You can currently do it in Maya against some, if it's possible. If these are already a feature, somebody correct me. But I'm very much looking forward to these things happening, hopefully sometime soon. So, 1 hour and 1 minute, I believe. And chat, help me out. Does this look like we've assetized the rig? I mean, I think we have at this point. We have a public interface that's explicit. We've claimed back the outliner. We do have shared attributes that will display all over the place. Let's see. I mean, we could look at namespaces and stuff like that, but I don't think they're that interesting. So, yeah, it comes back up. Oh. Wacom, seriously. Get your game together. And this should, yep, it's doing our switch for us. So, yeah, I reckon we're all good. I reckon this is all I have for assetization. Stream viewership wasn't too bad, but apparently the internet doesn't react to terrorism. Questions? I reckon, so hi, this is the season finale. Hopefully it wasn't too underwhelming. But we have finished the rig, I guess. I mean, in a way, it's not an amazing rig, but it's got everything that you would consider, that you would say that it needs to tick all these boxes to be a somewhat usable rig, which is, I can't select things I don't need to select. I don't want to see, and this is something that doesn't get, I would say it's a rule for a good rig is the interface that whoever uses it, rigs are like software, right? The user interface and the user experience should be as narrow as you can make it so that it's not confusing and at the same time as versatile as you can make it. Things should be as simple as they can be, but no simpler kind of scenario. Anyway, so I reckon that box is ticked, the interface is pretty clear. If an animator loads this rig, it doesn't matter that it has a couple hundred nodes or whatever it has. They're only gonna see some hierarchical objects that we're gonna lock with that. I think, yeah, we locked them. We should lock them. Anyway, they're only gonna see whatever we have here. So, out of however many nodes are in the rig, they're only gonna see these. I thought I had the HUD on. Questions? Comments? No, not that one. It seems that we have no question or comments, which means I can probably close these soon. So the select details always drives me insane because all it tells you is the actual select, literally soft select and stuff like that. Object details is the one that actually tells you what you have selected. Alright. Yeah, probably need higher DPI, but anyway. So we have 12 controls, and that's all you're gonna see in the outliner other than the hierarchical nodes. The seat we're definitely not done, so I'll delete it, but no. my mind is a little blown. So it's kind of a funny thing. I mean, it's I think containers it's the demonstration. This is true for your rigs as well. That's why I normally say don't do too much too early and present things as well as you can, but as soon as you can. If you if you put a half-hours feature that only works half the time or has too many sharp edges, and I'm talking rigs right now, uh, and it goes out. It's incredible how quickly the trench lines, the animators actually using the rigs, will develop these sort of like ancestral memory of like that is a terrible idea, never gonna use it again. So don't deliver half-hours features, don't deliver unstable features that work in a subset of situations, because if they're a good idea, you just burnt it. You've just completely blazed the ground around that idea and salted it, and it's gonna be years before it takes the game. And in many ways, software is the same. In fact, I would say it's probably rigging that takes from software in those regards. If you do something that is a good idea and you do it half-arsed and it goes out and people get burned, they will assume that that name is forever burned. And if you rename it while it's still half-arsed, now you just burned two names. But I wish like people on our end of things, so the TDs, actually played with features and software in a discerning way a little bit more and gave developers more feedback. And this is true for Autodesk and for a number of other vendors. If you're a developer, it's really demoralizing sometimes how quickly your work gets dismissed forever as some sort of twitch reflex / muscle memory. In production, people don't have time to deal with crap. But at the same time, we've seen that in general, as an industry, as professionals, we never seem to reevaluate what we have learned is bad. Anyway, give assets a try. They're not bad. They have their quirks. They'll find things, and hopefully they'll get better. But the more people use them and report on them, the better they will get. Because right now there's nothing. I want proxy attributes and I want assets to be cleaned up. Because there's nothing else in Maya that quite does the same things that they do. I don't know of any other way Maya. Sure, you can play with outliner flags and stuff like that, but you have to do everything piecemeal. It's a pain in the back. I don't know anything else in Maya that will actually help you narrow the view of groups of items so well that will be reflected in so many places in the UI. All right. I am gonna call it a day. I'm gonna give it 30 seconds, and I'm gonna call it a day. Well, unless a good question comes along. It's the end of the season. I can't believe it. 17 days. I don't know how many hours. A few. All right, we're calling it. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching. YouTube, Twitch, whatever. I mean, it's been fun. I've learned a lot. We'll see if there will be a season 1. I do believe there will be. I mean, there's a lot of fun stuff to do still. We'll have to find the time somehow. But yeah, thanks everybody for watching, and I will see you if you're watching this on the stream. I mean, I don't know, I might do some extra streams or some stuff like that to prepare for the next season that I don't record as a bonus for the people that actually care to follow the stream. Otherwise, I'll see you when I'll see you. I guess it's going to be a 2 or 3 weeks break. So have a good day, night, whatever it is over there, and stop in the recording.